I'm Michael. Thanks for coming. A brief disclaimer, these thoughts are my own and do not represent anybody else's thoughts and opinions. So in our economy, we have people with money, capital, who need people to work for them to grow their money. And then we have people in the labor pool who need money so they can make purchases to satisfy their needs and wants and eat and live indoors. And there is a cycle of payment from companies to people where they work, get money, then buy things from companies. And this personal consumption makes up somewhere between 60 and 70% of gross domestic product in the United States. We would imagine similar levels elsewhere. And the problem with autonomy is that it can turn work from sort of an ephemeral service that people trade or lease to companies into property that can be owned, which means then that capital can own the money and own the source of work, which breaks this link in the chain, which could be problematic for everyone. So the basic argument I have here is that pressures to maximize shareholder value forces rational companies to automate anything that actually minimizes costs. And furthermore, they're all making this decision individually, so they all have to make the same decision. And there's nobody sort of orchestrating the whole thing to say, well, we need to keep this many people employed, so don't automate everything. And further, if you don't choose to automate, then you become a target for acquisition and restructuring. My second point is that any job that a human can do can be automated to a sufficient level of quality. And by that, I don't necessarily mean as good as humans can do it, but good enough such that it doesn't substantially reduce the income for the company, and it doesn't add additional liability to the company. And then finally, if all the companies are making decisions to fire people and they're all doing it independently and replacing them with automation, this will create a lot of unemployed workers that can't buy things, and then that could affect a large portion of the economy. We saw in the earlier presentation that it could be somewhere between 10 and 50% of all jobs.
Sorry, Michael, I think you have a Zoom chat window in the way of your, partially in the way of your screen, so maybe you can just close it. Yeah, thank you, that's better.
So if we think this is a concern, there are some off-ramps to avoid this. First off, there might be tasks that machines can't do. I don't personally buy that, but I have a vested interest in sort of artificial intelligence being a thing. But if you do believe this, you then also have the burden of explaining what is special about human intelligence and capabilities that it can't be replicated in a machine. And we are seeing AI autonomy is making inroads into many aspects of human life. The argument could be that new jobs will be created, and I think it is true that new jobs will be created, but we do have to address the question if it would be enough new jobs and of a sufficient quality to maintain all the people who lost employment at similar or the same quality of life that they had before. It could be that the cost is too high, and this one I put a lot of stock in, just because any human capacity can be done in theory, it doesn't mean it can be done efficiently. Or to develop the state of the art in artificial intelligence that we have right now has taken decades and millions, if not billions of dollars of investment. It's not cheap, and there could be cheaper alternatives. An example of this would be the Kiwi delivery robots. Autonomous navigation is outsourcing control of the robot to people in Colombia, I believe. And finally, it could be another concern is that this is not compatible with climate change mitigation. There's a recent paper about the carbon footprint of training a neural network, which is something like 5 cars over their lifetime. So if you believe any of these things are enough to derail the problem, then choosing to do nothing could be a safe option. However, if we don't, and we want to do something, then I would argue we should attack the problem at the sort of the argument points that I had. If we have too much labor, people in the labor pool, then we could reduce the population over time through something like a one-child policy. But that would need to be distributed equitably and conducted humanely. And depending on how quickly autonomy does render everyone, I say everyone, many people unemployed, this approach may not be fast enough to mitigate the loss of jobs. And you'd have to deal with the people who are alive right now and need work or some means of living. If there's too much autonomy, you can try and tax and regulate it. This does set up competition between countries to change, or jurisdictions to change their regulatory structures in order to attract companies to work, to be in them, to gain whatever the perceived benefits is. And an example we've actually seen already would be the tax inversion maneuver. The most famous one might be the Apple in 2015, where it's now an Irish company. And then finally, if the economic model is broken, we can consider abandoning the model. And here I mean things like adopting a universal basic income or similar programs. And but again, the problem with these last two approaches, at least, is that the automation may exist in one country, and benefits may accrue to that country, but the job losses will be globalized. So we do need to have some sort of effective international collaboration, but this does create an unstable solution where there's benefits to defecting. So on that chipper note, thank you for listening to my organized panic about autonomy, and I would like to take any questions if you have them.